Hello, my name is Mia and I'm with the Museum of Natural and Cultural History at the University of Oregon. Instead of visiting you at your library today, I have the opportunity to take you inside our museum right here in Eugene, Oregon. Let's head inside. The museum is located on Kalapuya Ilihi, the traditional homeland of the Kayapuyya people. At the museum, we study the history of Oregon, both the history of the people in Oregon as well as the history of all the things in nature. That's our natural history. That includes things like fossils, forests, rivers, mountains, all the trees and plants and animals that live in Oregon. And we hope that someday you'll be able to come to the museum and check it all out for yourself. Today, we're going to explore something that people do. That is to create and use technologies. What do you think of when I say the word technology? What pops into your brain when you hear that word technology? A lot of people, when we think of technologies, will list things that plug into the wall or use electricity, like computers or phones or machines like airplanes or cars. But what if I told you that this is also a technology? A toothbrush is also a form of technology. And that's because a technology is anything that a person designs or creates in order to help us solve a problem or meet a need. And so a person didn't just pick this up off the forest floor and start brushing their teeth. Somebody invented it and tried to figure out a way to make a tool that would help us to clean our teeth. I bet you can find some technologies around the room that you're sitting in. Can you think of a technology that helps you to see when it's dark? That's right, the lights. How about a technology that helps you to not sit on the floor? Does anybody have a chair or a couch in their room? Those are also a kind of technology. How about a technology that helps you to see when your eyes aren't so good? Glasses. Is anybody wearing glasses? All of those are also forms of technology. And when a person is creating and inventing a new technology, they are engineering. Engineering is when someone uses problem-solving skills and their knowledge of how the world works in order to create a solution to a problem or to meet a need. So I bet you have done some engineering. Think about it. Have you ever created a structure that you built out of blocks or Legos or sand that you invented and created all on your own? Or have you ever made a new recipe in the kitchen, made something up and put ingredients together in a new way? How about taking a stream of water and putting sand or rocks or dirt in the way so that the water changes directions or stops? All of those are examples of kind of engineering, creating a solution to a problem or meeting a need. And so you've probably done a little bit of engineering. But just in case, let's try some engineering together so that we have a little bit of practice. I have a problem because I am wanting to create a game. Here's my problem. I want to make a game where I throw the ball into the bin, but I don't have to get up and keep getting it back. I want to be able to just have the ball and keep throwing it in the bin without getting up to go get it. And I have some materials I can use for this engineering project. We have duct tape and scotch tape. I have a clip that opens and closes. I have a stapler, a rope, and a stick. Maybe the stick is going to work. It's not quite long enough to get the ball back. So let's see, let's try the rope. How about you guys predict by thumbs up or thumbs down whether or not the rope is going to reach the bin? Let's see if this is long enough. Looks like it's definitely long enough. So let's try the first solution I'm going to try is to put the clip on the bin and see if I can get the ball back that way. Looks like it worked. I did solve my problem, but now I have another problem. The bin isn't in the right spot, and I can't get it back exactly where it was. So maybe we need to attach the rope to something else and keep the bin in its place. Can you think of some ways that I can attach the rope to the ball in order to play this game? remember what materials we have over here. You might be coming up with solutions in your brain, and that's called brainstorming. We could use the clip. You might have thought that we could use some tape to attach the ball to the rope. How about the stapler? Do you think that would be a good idea? Oh no, I forgot. The ball is filled with air. I don't think that's going to work. So let's try a few of those possible solutions. I'm going to start with some Scotch tape. And I want you to predict if you think this is going to work. We're going to put the Scotch tape on the ball. And you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down in order to predict if you think I'll be able to get the ball back with the Scotch tape. Let's try it. Oh, that did not work. But that's okay. Because when you're engineering, an important part of engineering is actually failure. When you fail, when a design doesn't work, you learn how to make it better, how to improve your design. I bet you could think of a different kind of tape that would work better than the Scotch tape. Let's try it. The Scotch tape. Let's try the duct tape. Right there. It already sounds stronger. Get your thumbs up and thumbs down ready to make your prediction. Do you think the duct tape will hold the rope on the ball better? Let's try it and see if I can get that ball back. It worked. We solved the problem. So we engineered a solution to that problem and can keep playing the game over and over. But let's try one more solution that we were brainstorming. How about the clip? What do you think if I put the clip onto the ball? We'll use the little top to clip it on. Make your prediction whether you think this will work so that we keep playing the game. Let's try that one. That worked too. And that's because problems in engineering can have more than one solution. There's never just one right answer when you're engineering. You can find multiple solutions in multiple ways to solve a problem or meet a challenge when you're engineering. There are lots of people in the world today that work as engineers, but engineering and technology is not a new thing. People have been engineering ever since people have been living on the earth. Here in Oregon, Native Americans were the first people to live on this land. They have lived here for more than 14,000 years, and that means that Native Americans were the first people to invent technologies here in Oregon, solving problems like building shelter, creating tools for hunting, creating ways for gathering and preparing food. Much of this knowledge and history is alive today in the tribal communities throughout our state. I would like to introduce you now to Sharon Yonker, a Coquel tribal member.
Sharon Yonker, Sinsanu, Milk Ka'u. Hi, my name is Sharon Yonker. I'm Milk Coos, Coquel, and Umpqua. I'm originally from Coos Bay, South Slough area. I grew up there, spent most of my life there, and now I live in between two places, Portland, Oregon, and Warm Springs, Oregon, which is in Central Oregon. So right now I'm in Warm Springs, which is on the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs Reservation.
Today we're talking about engineering and technology and how those have always been a part of human society. Can you tell us a little bit more about how early Native Americans in Oregon created and invented the tools they needed for everyday life?
First off, our first tools are our fingers and our digits, right? In comparison to other animals, we're fairly slow moving and can be easy targets of more much larger animals. So we had to use our brain and our hands to create things, create weapons, create fire, create tools to make other tools. And so that's what we did to survive. So here's a tool that we make. This is a more modern version of it, but it's still based on the same principle. This is called an adze, and this is a tool that we use for woodworking to basically take hog out a lot of wood to pare it down to something smaller where we could take our knives to. It's modern now because we use steel. So the blade is steel, and traditionally we would have used a stone called nephrite that we would have made the blades out of, and some people call that jade. But this is that type of rock, right? And sometimes it's found in riverbeds and or old riverbeds, but mainly it's found up in Washington and down in California, and then our people would trade to get it so that we could make our adze blades out of this. But to shape this down, we'd use another hard rock and sand and water, and then we would cut grooves in here until we could cut a blade and sharpen it on sandstone, and then of course attach it to the adze. And then if you look at the adze, what it really is, it's a weird shape, but what it really is it's a handle on a tree that's been cut out, right? And then that where the branch is, this fibers in here all interlocked, so they're super strong and they won't break as easily if it's just maybe this part or even this part. So the stone or the metal blade would be attached here, and then the fibers around here, of course this is modern day fishing twine, but the fibers probably would have been made out of wild iris fibers, or the leaves that they could be dried and rolled on your thigh and then made into twine. And then the glue attaching this, although I use epoxy now, would have been made out of asphaltum, which is pine pitch or tree sap mixed with charcoal. And then about a 50-50 of that, and then it creates this nice sticky adhesive that you could put and keep things attached. And so that's kind of how it works, right? So, and then you could use this tool to make other tools.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you mind telling us a bit about how you learned the traditional knowledge of the Coquel tribal members, and how you might be passing that down to future generations?
Yeah, so of course I didn't have any of this stuff growing up, and it wasn't in my father's skill set, and a lot of our tribal members didn't have it. But I grew up on a slough, which is, kind of where fresh water meets salt water, or an estuary. And we grew up in canoes, but we didn't have any traditional canoes. And so growing up, I always wondered where our dugout canoes were. And so when I got to college, I started researching with my cousins and a sibling, just trying to find out what this information was and what we had. And then when we found stuff that pertained to our tribe or our area, one, they would write their papers, and two, I would try to make things, just try to figure out what it was, how it worked, and eventually got into making canoe paddles and started making these tools to try to learn how to use them. And so hopefully, by me making these things and using them, learning how to use these, I can pass that on to younger people or other tribal members.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the youth and making traditional clam shovels?
Yeah, so a few years back, I received a small grant to help do the same thing I was talking about before, trying to teach youth how to make things. But in my mind, making traditional items don't really have context unless you put them into use. Unless you can make something, but you have to use it, right? So if you're putting your energy into it, once it's done, you don't want it to sit there. So the idea was to teach our youth and or adults how to make a traditional clam shovel. And so then we taught them how to identify and dig certain clams. And then that afternoon, we taught them how to clean those clams and how to cook them. So the idea is that if we're making a traditional tool, you'll create something that people want to use, and then they'll make a connection with our community.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Sharon, and for sharing all of this great information with us and showing these traditional tools that you have. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, Mia. I really appreciate the opportunity to share parts of my culture with whomever this is going out to, and hopefully your students will want to make things and use them. And I think that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if it's a traditional Native American item. It's just learning how to make things is really empowering, and hopefully the students will want to do that.
Great. In fact, we'll be talking about making some things in just a couple of minutes.
Great. Thank you. Right.
Back here at the museum, one object we have in our collection is a stone adze, a wood carving tool. Scientists believe that it was made here in the coastal region of Oregon over 1,000 years ago. A scientist who studies these tools and objects made by people in the past is called an archaeologist. I've invited an archaeologist from right here at the University of Oregon to join us and tell us more. Hello, Jamie, and thanks for joining us. Can I ask you to start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I'm Jamie Kennedy, and I'm an archaeologist with the University of Oregon Museum of Natural and Cultural History, and I work in the research division at the museum.
Fabulous. Can you tell us a little bit more about what archaeology is and what archaeologists study?
So archaeology is the study of past cultures, and archaeologists are the scientists that study artifacts, which are human-made objects that people have left behind in the past.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit more about how archaeologists do their job? Like, how do they find these artifacts and where?
So archaeologists do a lot of research to figure out the answer to that question. We want to be looking in places where we have the most likelihood of finding archaeological objects. So if we were looking for, say, a place where people used to live, we'd look at areas like around a river or where there are a lot of resources available that people would have wanted to be close to when they were picking the place that they wanted to build their houses.
Can you tell us a little more about how you got interested in archaeology and what type of work you actually do?
So I've been really interested in archaeology since I was a little kid. I remember thinking how neat it was that there was actually a job out there where you were just studying other people and the lives of other people and how they lived their lives. I specifically am really interested in people's relationship with food through time. And my area of expertise is looking at plant materials from archaeological sites. So if we have identified a site where there is remnants of an old campfire that people were sitting around and cooking, I will actually look through all of the fill that's in that fire pit, which we call a feature or a hearth, and pick out all of the seeds and the charcoal that were left behind, so I can tell what people were using for fuel to make their fire and also the types of plants that they were cooking in the hearth.
Do you have a favorite discovery or thing that you have found or discovered over the years?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with other museum archaeologists here in Oregon that have been working for decades who specialize in looking at Paleo-Indian sites. So these are sites right here in Oregon that have evidence of people living here over 10,000 years ago. They were the very first people to live in North America, and finding the tools that they left behind, the spear points and the fires that they made, and just seeing where they lived in rock shelters in the Oregon desert has been really cool.
Neat. Sounds like you've got quite a cool job. Thanks so much for joining us today and telling us a little bit more about archaeology and artifacts and your job.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mia.
Artifacts are examples of technologies from the past, showing us how people use the available resources in the environment to solve the problems and meet the needs that they had for everyday life. For example, the early Native Americans used the available building materials and the lifestyle and climate that they were in to create and invent the types of living structures that they used. On the coast in Oregon, the plank houses were made out of cedar wood, which split very easily into long, straight planks and did not rot. This is a small replica of a plank house. The real plank houses were much larger. In the Great Basin region of Oregon, wickiup structures were built out of willow branches and tule grass mats. The woven plants actually allowed the dwelling to stay dry, but also letting air circulate to keep things cool inside the home. Another great example of engineering I'd like to show you is this atlatl. This atlatl is a hunting technology, and it was designed by early Native Americans here in Oregon over thousands of years ago. And this tool actually makes it easier to hunt by sending this dart or spear much farther than a person could throw it with just their arm. You can do that by sticking the point of the atlatl at the end of the dart or spear, and it makes your arm longer so that when you throw the spear, it goes farther, like that. And it can go farther and harder, and it made hunting much more efficient and improved that skill. So this is a wonderful example of a technology that is actually still being used today in something like this. If you've ever seen a dog tennis ball thrower called a chuck-it, it also makes your arm longer, and so you can throw the tennis ball farther. And so many of these inventions from the past are also still being used in different ways today in modern society. Now it's your turn to do some engineering. Each of you should have an Engineer at Home activity kit that you receive from your library. But don't worry, if you don't have a kit, many of these activities can be done with materials that you'll find around your home. Each activity challenges you to engineer something, to design a solution by solving the challenge. And there's an activity packet that will guide you through your engineering with pictures and instructions and simple materials in the bag for you to do the challenges. Remember that when you're engineering, there can be more than one way to solve a problem. And also, if your design isn't working, remember that you can always improve it to make changes. So you can keep trying, and failure is okay when you're engineering. It just helps you to design something better. The first challenge in the activity kit is to design a boat. And your challenge, there's some aluminum foil, and to take one piece of aluminum foil and see how many pennies you can float on the boat. So you'll need a bin of water and some aluminum foil. You can shape that foil into any shape of boat you want, and try to put weight inside to see how many it will hold. You can use pennies, but you can also use small pebbles or stones from outside or any other small items you might have as weights. The second challenge is to create a shelter made from index cards and paper clips. And you can use actually any kind of paper for this challenge. Index cards are easy because they're already cut into a shape, and paper can be folded and made into lots of different shapes. You can fold it, you can roll it up, and you can use the paper clips to connect two of those pieces of paper together. So your challenge will be to create a structure that is at least 6 inches tall and can fit 3 people or animals or toys inside the shelter, and can hold the weight of at least 1 beanbag on top. And if you don't have a beanbag, you can make your own with beans or rice inside of a sandwich bag, and test your structure by putting that on top and seeing if your structure can hold it up. The third challenge is to create a basket, to weave a basket using a traditional method of weaving called twining. And you'll have some yarn and cups. And take your paper cup and cut strips around the cup, cutting all the way down to the bottom of the paper cup so that you end up with lots of strips like this. you would want to have an even number of paper strips in order to be able to make your designs on your cup easily. And you would use 2 different colors of yarn, cut into about 5 feet in length and tied together at the top. You'll start your weaving by putting the yarn, the knot, inside of the cup. So it's in there with one color coming out on one side of a strip and the second color on the next opening. And you would start your weaving by taking the first color and moving in front of a paper strip and then behind a paper strip. And then you take the next color and you go in front and behind the next strip. And you keep changing the color and doing the same motion over and over. So I go in front and behind. Then I switch to the other color and I go in front and behind. One more time, next color, in front and behind. And as you continue doing that, the colors will start to stack up on the paper strips with the same color, as long as you have an even number of paper strips. And you will just keep going in front and behind, in front and behind, until all that yarn gets used up. And then you can tie some new yarn onto the yarn and keep going all the way to the top. Challenge number 4 in your packet is to design a launcher tool that can launch a pom-pom into the air. And the materials that are in the kit are rubber bands, craft sticks, a plastic spoon, and a pom-pom. And you can use that to make this design of a launcher tool. Think about something like a catapult or a diving board, something that launches something across the room. And this design will launch the pom-pom across the room. You can find materials around your house and add it to these materials to make a different type of launcher. There's lots of different solutions to launching a pom-pom into the room. Your activity packet also includes a ball, and you can use this with your launcher tool to see how different it goes on your launcher tool from the pom-pom. But you can also use this to do lots of other engineering challenges. One engineering challenge in the kit is to ask you to design a game. You can create a board game or a card game or a ball game, some kind of game that you can play with your family and friends. One example of a fun game is this ball maze that I used toilet paper tubes and paper cups and created a maze inside of a lid of a box. And the ball can go all around in the maze, and you can time yourself to see how quickly you can get the ball through your maze. Also in your activity packet on the back are lots of activity ideas to do some engineering challenges at home. You can make up your own challenges or try some of these. You can do one of these engineering challenges a day for a week, or you can try them all in one afternoon. It's up to you. Hope you enjoyed our program today and that you will go to the museum's website to find even more fun things to do at home, mnch.uoregon.edu.